Well, welcome everyone to the very first edition of Speaking Up with Wendy Baird Packard, the podcast. I am very excited and a little nervous to be taking this leap. I am sure there are people out there thinking, what could she possibly have to say? Gosh, that's the whole point. I want to talk a little bit today about why the podcast came about and what the format's going to look like. And hopefully it's going to be something that resonates with you and that you'll come back and listen to the podcast over and over. The thing I want to talk about really quickly is my goal is to make the podcast 15 minutes or less. So the whole mission is to talk about things that maybe people are already thinking about, or at the end of the podcast, I want you to be able to say, oh my gosh, yes, I thought I was alone in that, or gosh, that really resonates with me, or yeah, I can totally relate to that. And that's the whole goal. And so I can do that in 15 minutes or less. And so you can listen to that in the morning, or a quick listen on the way to work, or on your lunch break. Nothing that's going to take a lot of time, but hopefully has an impact, a good impact on your day as you go about your day. So why did I do this? I wanted to do it for a lot of reasons. I think, and I'll talk about that more as the podcasts go on, but if I really think about it, when I was really young, I always thought I wanted to be on the radio and be a radio announcer and talk on the radio. And there was times that I looked at it and looked at radio stations and just was too afraid to do it. Part of this podcast is also hopefully to get people out of their comfort zone as I talk about different topics, that they'll go ahead and jump out there and take a chance on different things. So yeah, I wanted to start the podcast. I got a lot of feedback over the last couple of weeks, and the way I hear from God is, or my higher power, which is God, is it just comes up over and over and over. And people say things to me that are like, oh, kind of like God speaking to me through them. And this is one of those instances. So I had considered doing a podcast a long time ago. And then through my business, through my coaching business, have been a guest on several podcasts and have watched how it's done, and have just been so impressed with the people that have done it and thought it was really hard and really complicated. And I'm not so sure that it isn't, but I'm going to figure it out little by little. So I know that I am at the very beginning stages. I know the podcast I was just a guest on, she had a producer and it went off to be edited, and it was all very fancy and how they send the links and all of that. And I can tell you right now, I'm not there with this. I am just starting out, and it's one of those things that if you don't start, you're never going to start. So the last straw, the last prompting that God kind of gave to me was through the guest host of that last podcast that I did. We did a video, and she could see that I have a microphone and a setup, and I have a pretty good desk because I do a lot of Zoom calls with my business, and so I have lighting and I have a microphone. And she said, you should really do a podcast. And then at the end of that, she said, and at first it took me back a little bit. First she said, I said, I hope everything was okay, and I gave you the information that your listeners can really use. And she said, yeah, it was great. You're really a storyteller. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a negative thing. And it really did kind of bother me for a couple of days. And then I sat back and thought, no, that is a gift. I do love to tell a good story. I usually will write it. I'd consider doing a lifestyle blog, just telling funny stories, but I don't really want to take the time to write. It's easier for me to talk. And that is sort of what pushed me into this podcast. How I want to format this podcast moving forward, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but I really have always loved, and it's funny how your life, when you look back, you're like, oh, I've always kind of meant to do this, but it took me a long time. So those of you who know me know that I'm a communication major. I find language and speaking and how we communicate fascinating. I didn't do very well in school till I figured that out, and then I did great all the way through college, and I'm pursuing more education surrounding communication. But I have always loved really good speeches and really good commentaries. And so growing up, I liked Paul Harvey, and his closing sentence was always, now you know the rest of the story. And Andy Rooney, who always closed 60 Minutes, and he did that from 1978 to 2011. Just had some really great short commentaries that are always very made you think, and you were like, oh, that's so cool. Irma Bombeck, same thing. Some of these older commentary, great speechwriters, great writers, great. Just really cool how they could summarize everything up and made a really good point that would resonate with you. So that's the format I'm going for here in this podcast. to just give you snippets a couple times a week that hopefully, like I said, you can go, oh yeah, I totally understand or agree with that, making you feel like you're not alone in the world. Because I can't tell you how many times I've done something and went, am I the only one that's ever done that silly thing? Classic example, I was in the grocery store, I think I was, and picked up something, set it back on the shelf. It fell off the shelf. I leaned over to pick it up, and as I stood up, hit my head on the shelf. And I was like, how does that happen? And am I the only person in the world that has ever done something ridiculous like that? And that is kind of what the format of this is. I'm sure I'm not. And hopefully if you're listening, you've gone, oh my gosh, I've done that too. And we're connecting. In a world where social media and there's so much communication out there, and we are least connected than we've ever been because we put out content that we want people to see, not really connecting. So we have a lot of friends, but we don't connect. We don't kind of feel like we're in the same boat together. And that's the point of this podcast. I want my listeners to really feel connected, feel like I see them, feel like they're seen, feel like they're part of the world, feel like you're not alone out there in these situations. And different topics that I want to talk about moving forward are going to be things like doctors. Gosh, you can't get a doctor's appointment anymore. And when you do you feel heard and listened to? And I've got some stories for that. So I am a storyteller, and I want to share my stories, but I also want to share things that are going on in the world that I know connect us all. So that's going to be the basic format. I'll have some guests probably, hopefully. Be looking out for my friends that I might holler at for. But the whole mission statement is to connect us in something that resonates or that we can relate to together. So moving forward in the world, in your day, you feel like you're seen and somebody's thinking about you. And that is how I will intend to go forward with every one of these podcasts. I can't wait to see where it goes. I will learn as I go. I really don't have any idea how to do this. And I'm learning I'm building a YouTube channel that all of these podcasts will be out there with also the videos that I build for my business, the other side of my life, which is career development and public speaking. So that'll all go out into a YouTube channel. And then the podcast, and then I'll also have my other areas that can check in with me on. But I am so excited, and I'm learning so much, and we're going to talk about that in one of the podcasts. Like, wow, can we keep learning? And I'm going to talk about a group of women who inspire me every day on their ability to just constantly learn and develop, and they're way past the age of 50. So that'll be another topic that's coming up. So I'd love to hear from you. Also, you can reach out to me at speakingupwithwbp@gmail.com. If you have any show ideas or something you want to talk about or a comment you want to talk about that you did or didn't like the show. But one thing I'm going to tell you is I'm developing this as a creative outlet to be incredibly authentic. I feel like so much of our time in the world is partially who we are and then partially who we have to be in the world. When you're in business, you have to maintain a certain personality and business etiquette. And when even dealing with your friends and families, you have to kind of separate yourself from being completely authentic to who you have to be in the social norms kind of thing. And so this podcast for me is an outlet where I'm going to be completely authentic. And I want to just use my voice as it comes. Like it, don't like it. I might talk too fast. I might talk too slow. I might talk too long. Hey, that's what it is. I am not going to compromise on who I am on this particular forum. So I'll leave you with this point on this one, that I hope to inspire, as I said, and connect with my listeners with, my own content, but I'm going to go back to some of these Andy Rooney's. My personality is I want to be kind. I am Christian in faith. So my topics should all be very family friendly, but they're going to be authentic. And I think that's super important, to show up being just who I am. And hopefully that resonates with listeners and you'll share it and I will make you laugh or make you smile. I couldn't be more excited to launch this thing and appreciate anyone and everyone who will support it. I'd love to hear from you, and hopefully we can connect and make you feel like part of the world. Have a great day. Until next time.